Not everyone works in a place that people are willing to like change that, especially because I came in as a woman and they've seen me transition. And so it's been really nice because a lot of the folks who I've worked with the past couple years have been good about my transition and immediately made sure to switch to the new name and things like that. It's been an experience for sure.
Content warnings for this episode include dysphoria, misgendering, medical experiences with HRT, and anti-trans bigotry.
Genderful would like to acknowledge the indigenous peoples and unceded lands that the producers, hosts, and guests live and have dwelt upon. Today we honor the
Post-Salish,
Mohawk, Algonquin, and Anishinabewaki people.
Muscogee and Tsalaguwetiyi.
We honor the elders, the human, plant, and animal ancestors of these lands, and celebrate the living descendants of these peoples. May all beings tend these lands for the goodness of the next 7 generations and beyond.
Howdy, folks. Welcome to Genderful, a talk show interviewing gender-diverse people about their special interests. Hi, I'm GenderMeowster, and my pronouns are they, them.
Hi, I'm Miranda, and my pronouns are she, her.
The focus of our show is to interview trans, non-binary, agender, two-spirit, and gender-diverse people regarding their special interests, passion projects, and resources for the gender-diverse community.
We want our audience to know that we hold multiple diverse identities and bring these lenses to the show with our passion for telling our stories.
I identify as non-binary, transmasculine, polyamorous, ADHD, autistic, and disabled with chronic pain and mobility issues. I also am white and reside in the United States.
I identify as trans feminine, neurodivergent, queer, and a person of color residing in Canada. We invite you to remember that we are whole people with robust lives, friendships, challenges, and successes. We love and are loved, and we are delighted to share these stories with you.
As always, we kindly remind our listeners that no person is a monolith of their identities. Your identities can change over time and are valid every step of the way. And if you think you're gender diverse, you are gender diverse. There's no social or medical prerequisite to be included in the community. Awesome. Y'all, welcome to Genderful. This week, our guest Tofi is they them pronouns is chatting with us about being trans in life and fictional media. Tofi streams a variety of fun content on Twitch under the name Tofilium. Please definitely check out their channel if you're not following them already. Welcome to the stream, Tofi.
I'm very excited.
I'm very excited too. I'm like, look at what I'm doing with my hands. This is how excited I am.
I know I'm like under the desk, like fiddling with my fingers and rings.
Just like
I'm
excited
going to go follow
wiggling.
your Twitch channel right now.
Do it.
18 plus. I will say it is 18 plus.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Just to throw that out there.
This channel is also that.
Oh, bless. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. And mods, if one of you could do a little shouty outy, or maybe I can. So yeah, I'm so excited that you're here. I feel like have we been trying to get you on the show for a while? Is that?
Yeah, back in like October, and then I moved to like cross country, and life has been lifing. So I'm glad to finally be here. Like, what is it, a year later? 8, 9 months, 10 months.
I mean, it's awesome. Sometimes there are some people we've wanted to have on the show for multiple years, and then when we finally book them, it's like, yay, we get to talk. It's fun.
Yay. It's hard.
Also,
is
this your Shrek Uwu emote that's happening in the chat right now?
It is. My whole theme is Shrek and swamp. So
wow, that's
I love that.
That's a choice.
So much.
Listen,
we're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into the Shrek stuff too as part of our questions today. I'm so excited.
Oh my god!
Getting deep in Shrek.
So hang out for the Shrek Essay, everyone.
Oh boy. Can I make a confession? I have never seen any of the Shrek movies.
Ooh.
This has been a great podcast episode. It was great to meet y'all. I think I gotta go.
I have seen all of them multiple times. I think we even had a watch party in the server to enjoy it again.
So you need to see it, I think is what we're saying. Like, you need to see it. It's so good.
Okay, all right.
So the jokes are so dense in those films. There's so much, like, you can watch it 10 times and find a new thing each time you watch it. It's so great.
Yeah. There's a lot of adult jokes in it, like
Oh, I'm sure
surprising
there
amount of
are.
adult stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I know we're excited to talk about that, but I want to ask our first two questions we like to ask all of our guests to start out. So Tofi, what might be some things you can trace back to your youth that indicated you might be gender diverse one day?
Yeah, and so I thought a lot about this one. And I think one of the reasons it took me so long to figure out that I was non-binary was because I really didn't have any. Like I existed as a young girl, like very happily. Like I was a tomboy at times, like I was okay being a tomboy. I still was like very feminine and wore dresses and enjoyed wearing dresses and like presented very femininely. Like I played sports on top of that. Like I didn't really have any of those like quote unquote common indications. Like, and I didn't have that deep dysphoria that I feel like is a common trope in a lot of like binary trans folks. Not in all of them, right? Because you can be trans and like not have dysphoria and things like
Mhm.
that. But like, I feel like it took me a really long time to figure out my identity because a lot of the content I was constantly hearing was like, I always knew, I always knew I was different. I always knew I was trans. I had very, like a lot of dysphoria in my body growing up. And I just didn't really have that. And so, yeah, which is
Yeah.
something I feel like I don't hear from a lot of folks.
Yeah. Well, and that's okay too,
Um,
right?
Yeah.
Like
Um,
that's allowed to be how our beginnings were as well.
yeah. And it's just the whole like not needing to feel this like dysphoria is not a
yeah.
requirement for being trans. And I wish like that
Hmm.
was talked about more. Because I mean, I'm in the same boat. Like I didn't experience dysphoria until I started transitioning.
Hmm.
So like I was kind of ingrained with this idea. It's like, oh well, I don't experience dysphoria, therefore I'm not trans. This is just,
Hmm.
Mhm.
I just fantasize about being a girl. That's it. That doesn't
And
mean
I'm just like, oh,
anything.
I just love hearing all these people's like,
Yeah,
identity stories. Like
yeah,
I so much like enjoy loving and like listening to these. And it's like, are thinking a little deeper, fam. And it's like, oh, eventually you do. And it's great.
yeah, yeah. So there, I mean, there's quite a few people out there that, that have kind of gone down that pipeline of like
Hmm.
not experiencing dysphoria, but still being trans. So
Hmm.
yeah, you're not
Just
alone.
text word in the
You're
chat. My
absolutely not
childhood was
alone.
much the same.
Hmm. That's really nice. And I feel like that's like one of the big joys about, being on social media. Like social media kind of sucks sometimes, right? But like
Mhm,
having communities like this where you're finally like learning about other people's experiences and knowing
mhm,
that other people kind of experience the same, because especially as children and stuff, we kind of learn from what, we hear from other people. And so it's always really nice being in like queer spaces, trans spaces who are very like, are able to talk about their experiences and are very willing to do that. That way folks can, know that they aren't alone and figure out their identities without feeling like they need to fit in these like very specific weird boxes. Um,
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
So now how would you say your relationship to gender has evolved over time?
oh, it's been a time.
Oh, yes.
So,
I can
yeah.
imagine.
Yeah, I am what I call a panini trans. I came out in the beginning of the pandemic, so panini trans.
Nice.
I think, yeah,
Hashtag
yeah,
panini trans.
and I feel like that's like a pretty common experience that like at least of the folks that I've like started like watching on Twitch and like whenever I first joined Twitch, just as a viewer, not as a streamer, that was definitely something that was a pretty common theme of a lot of folks that I started like hanging out in their communities was like they realized their identities during the pandemic, and a lot of it was
Mhm,
because we're like, we feel like we have to perform a certain way when we're like physically going into work, where we're physically being perceived by a lot of people, when we're like actively being, having to perform like, the gender we were
mhm.
assigned at birth. And all of a sudden, when you take away all those and, we're home a lot more for folks who are privileged enough, right, to be home, because not everyone was able to stay
Right.
home during the pandemic because our government sucks. Um, for a
Yeah.
lot of us who are able to finally like, just kind of sit with ourselves because we couldn't go anywhere, we couldn't see
Mhm,
anyone, we finally kind of had all of that outside influence kind of stripped away. I feel like a lot of us finally sat down and we're like, why are we forcing ourselves to, perform like this and like conform to these norms? And so for me, at least, that was very much the like how I went through, because I started, as a cis woman, I was very happy. I was very fine, like kind of being in that identity for, 20 something years of my life. 2020, I can't do math on the fly, but for 20 something years of my life, I was okay, not dysphoric or anything, it's just like use she, her pronouns. And I think it was like 5 or 6 months probably into the pandemic, where I started getting on Twitch more. I started hearing more people's experiences with their identities and with gender, and like started. I called myself gender apathetic, which I don't know if was like actually I didn't find that term anywhere, but like that's like how my brain kind of thought of it. It was like very much a thing where I didn't care about my perceived identity. It was pretty much just like, I'm happy in who I am. Like, I don't care if people view me as feminine, mask, as a man, as androgynous, as non-binary, whatever else. I was pretty much just like, I don't really care. Like, and it was to the point where I used any and all pronouns, like at any time. Um, and I think that lasted for 4 or 5 months, about 4 or 5 months, where I just used any and all pronouns, didn't really care, didn't feel a deep dysphoria or like disconnect with any of those. And then after that, I started using rotating pronouns because slowly, very, very slowly, whenever people would use she, her for me, I was slowly just had this little like weird feeling where I was like, who are they talking about? Like, and not feeling
Mm-hmm.
right sitting in that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started going by rotating pronouns where, and we'll talk about work in a second, where like people at work, very specific people, not everyone, I was still she, her to a large subset, but very specifically in trans and like the Pride ERG employee resource group around queer folks at work, very specifically in a small community of people at work, and with friends, and with like the community online. I, would rotate between, using she and they one day and then like he, him another day, or like he, they, and neo pronouns another day, and like slowly trying to like change all those out, trying to figure out what I resonated most with. And for a while, like I still just used rotating ones where I was no longer gender apathetic. I was just kind of like, okay, like any and all pronouns, but like, I started to care a little more about how people started perceiving me. And I went towards more like liking mask side, of either he, him, or they, them, and I wasn't feeling the she, her that well. And I played a lot of D&D characters specifically that use like he, they pronouns. D&D is a beautiful
Nice.
thing to get
Mm-hmm.
into
Yeah.
if you're trying to figure out identity stuff. Just saying.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And so I started using a lot of he, theys, and stuck with he, they for a couple months, a pretty long time. And then eventually I was just like, he finally started to not fit and not feeling right. And so I went to they, them, and also neo pronouns are fine, but I tend to lean towards they, them. So it was like a 2-year experience of me just like using a whole bunch of different pronouns, switching them out, trying to figure it out, to where now I identify as agender. Like I'm very much like trash goblin, but they, them.
Now that you mention it, you do have some Oscar the Grouch energy.
Thank you. I hope for them and Shrek mixed together. Like
Yes. Oh
that's my
God.
goal in life.
No, that's really interesting, and it's great that you had the freedom to kind of explore all your different options. That's really what I think everyone should do. That's cis people
Yeah.
included. Is
Oh yeah.
just play the field, see what works for you, and then if you come back to your gender assigned at birth, great.
Yeah.
Then for sure that's where you're supposed to be. But I am stealing that whole line from someone else. I did not come up with that. If you know who it is, but yeah, I love that for you, that you were able to have that whole journey with all the pronouns.
It was fun.
I have a follow-up question. I'm wondering if you identify with like gender goblin or being goblin core, because I just Googled and apparently those are actual things.
Oh
Those
my
are real
God.
things.
Okay. So I'm gonna in-depth Google after this. That's gonna be my hyperfixation after this
Great,
episode. I'm just gonna
great.
go look at that.
Here's
Thank you.
here's a link.
Oh,
I'll put
bless
it
your
in
soul.
Discord for us too.
Oh my God.
I love that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a thing. And now I'm gonna go, yes, most likely, yes.
We're going with
I like
yes
I'm afraid
until
to click
proven
that link.
otherwise.
I'm afraid.
It's okay.
Right, from Urban Dictionary too. Like you never know what's going to be on there.
Well, I mean, it's not urban. It's Vice.com, but I mean,
I sent
like
one of each. Yeah.
I still have the D&D brain rot. So like, I hear goblin, I'm just like, these are just
You
monsters for me to kill.
You just did all that Baldur's Gate on your stream,
Yes.
right, Miranda?
Oh my god.
Y'all go check out NassAttack's YouTube channel and the Baldur's Gate stuff. I watched your first couple of Baldur's Gate videos and I was like, oh my gosh.
I've got one coming
You're
out
so
next week that is a
You're
banger.
so funny. You're so funny. My favorite part is when you were like making trans characters like with full genitals on stream.
Please.
Yes.
Because it's content that can be streamed because it's like, it's fine to stream that.
Oh,
It's
I mean,
great.
but I
It's
had
great.
to censor it for
You
YouTube.
had to censor for YouTube. Yeah.
Oh,
you did.
really? Dang.
So I put my
Just
logo
put a little
over
Shrek
all the naughty
face.
bits.
Oh,
Yeah, it's so funny.
that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
It's just like you're like, oh, here's this person. All of a sudden, there's a big face.
Yeah.
Oh yes, more naked adventures coming up next week.
I'm just skimming this article about Goblin Core, and I'm seeing the phrase "feral joy," and I love that for us.
Oh my god.
Yes. Oh, that's great. I think everyone
there's,
deserves
like-
a little feral joy in their life.
There's like people in like mushroom outfits doing awesome weird dances in the snow, and I'm like, yes. Also, the phrase "no gender, only bugs." So, I mean,
There you go.
there you go.
This is now a Goblin Core podcast.
Change the entire intro outro. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I love that. See, I knew there was some sort of goblin gender thing. I was trying to see if there's like a gender wiki that I find Juice is often posting in the Discord. So I was trying to find it on there, but I don't remember the name of the wiki, so then I couldn't find it. And now we have Vice Goblin Core things. In true ADHD fashion, we have completely derailed our plans, and that's fine. All right. Are we ready to switch topics?
I'm ready.
Are we ready? All right. Tofi, can you tell us about your experiences with being openly trans in the workplace? Ooh.
Yeah. It's a fun time because so I started my job back in 2019 before the pandemic. And so very much was still using my legal / dead name, right? Identified as a cis woman, all that stuff, to now where I am, I'm using what I call my corporate name, Oliver. And I use they, he pronouns there. And so, it's nice because a lot of them, like, I don't know if like nice is the right word, but like I am lucky enough to work at a place who like is trying their best to be inclusive. Need is a lot of work, but at least is committed to that and trying, and so it's been a fun experience because so I work at I'm a senior data analyst at a pretty large like healthcare research company. And so the varying demographics is, as you can imagine, for someone trying to get into healthcare data analytics, it's very skewed cis white men, right? Cis white people in general, but a lot of cis white men. And at least there's some, they've got some diversity of people of color, which is great. There's like over 1,000 folks in this company, and like less than 2%, I would say, maybe 5%. If I'm going to be generous, less than 5% of us are trans in some way. I think there's like 1% of us that are openly like trans, and like probably more that like aren't openly for safety reasons. But it is, it was a fun time transitioning. And I say fun time, like, like it was okay. I don't use like the name I would like to use because I learned really early on that whenever I was using my dead name, my legal name, dead name, I was still, even though I used like they, he pronouns and very visibly had they, he pronouns literally everywhere on all my WebEx meetings, like on like everything I made sure was updated, like every single place you looked, you could see they, he next to them. I was still constantly getting misgendered, right? Because that was before I was on HRT, and my voice has very much changed I've been on HRT for 13 months as of last week. Yeah, and I'm on a low dose. Thank you. I'm really happy about it. It's definitely helped with a lot of dysphoria that I found after I started transitioning also. Yeah, because very much I had a very high voice. Like I go back and listen, and I have a very stereotypical, woman's voice in the binary, gender binaries that people have, right? And I'm using that in air quotes for folks who may not be able to visibly see. And so I also have a very gendered woman's name. Like you hear it and you're like, oh, that's a woman, in very, again, stereotypical, like binary gendered standards. And so because of that, people wouldn't ever gender me correctly because unless they were very specifically in like the small queer community that we have at work, because they tried to actively pay attention to that. And like very few people outside of that. But generally, I would still just get she, her pronouns constantly. Um, and it's gotten a lot better now because I've changed my name to a man's name, right? Oliver is very, stereotypical, like quote unquote man's name again.
I feel like it's
Even
a
though,
stereotypical trans name too, though.
yeah, yes, it is. It
You just
definitely
have like
is.
6 names on repeat, just like
Yeah, right. And it's fantastic. I love
say
it for
that
all of
lovingly
us.
with lots of joy.
Yeah, right. We also have Moss.
Yeah.
Oh my
All the
gosh.
3-letter names.
Right. It's the best.
Max and
And
Sam and Jack.
yes. You know what? The funny thing is too, is like, I really liked the name Max. Like if I were to be actually able, like Tofi's my chosen name, like no name is ever going to be better than Tofi for me. Tofi feels like me. It's been me ever since I transitioned to, even before I transitioned. Like Tofi was my first D&D character. I loved the name and I've just kind of stuck with it.
Aw.
Yeah. And it's based off my cat Tofu.
No. Tofi and Tofu.
Because whenever Tofu screams, he's a cat, he screams, his voice sounds like he's like hit some helium because he's got some really high-pitched screams, right? So tofu, helium, tophelium.
Oh my
Oh,
goodness.
That's my
you have
name.
our origin story.
The origin story
Yeah.
revealed.
There it is. Yeah. And so I'm getting out of it. My ADHD is going, but pretty much I would have loved the name Max,
Okay.
but because I was constantly getting misgendered, even with my dead name, even though it was like a woman's name, quote unquote woman's name, I realized really early on that I needed to have a name that wasn't gender neutral, right? Because not being on HRT back then, and still having like a very high pitched voice, people still saw me, and like even now they still see a woman in most cases when I'm out and about. But like I very much knew that I had to have like a quote unquote man's name where people would hear it and like assign he him to it. Otherwise, I was going to continue getting misgendered. And so I use a corporate name, Oliver. I use he they pronouns there because even whenever I was using any and all pronouns, and even when I was using just they and he pronouns, I found that I constantly just got he him. There was hardly any they thems, right? People are not good at non-binary pronouns there. Even a lot of the folks that we have there who are non-binary, we've got someone who uses zero pronouns there. We've got folks who use they them pronouns there. People still just really suck at it. Not everyone, but the vast majority of them kind of are, have a lot of unlearning to do and a lot of like assumption unlearning to do. And so I don't use the name I would like there. I don't use the pronouns I would like there, but like generally everything else, I'm pretty okay. I'm like, you know what, at least I could change my name. At least I could change my pronouns and like wouldn't get kicked off project work. Like they at least like accepted the Oliver he him. And so and that's like kind of a lucky story, right? Like not everyone works in a place that people are willing to like change that, especially because I came in as a woman and they've seen me transition. And a lot of folks on my projects have even seen me transition. Because a lot of the project work I do is like you get on the project and you're on that project for a couple of years, depending on how like long the contract is. And so it's been really nice because a lot of the folks who I've worked with the past couple of years have been really good, like have been good about my transition and like immediately made sure to switch to the new name and things like that. So it's been an experience for sure. And I think that in terms of like using not using the right pronouns at work for safety reasons is probably something that a lot of folks also do. I know a lot of folks at my company who are trans who specifically use pronouns that they don't use because, it makes it easier. Because for me and myself and my brain, I'm like, as long as I can get through the day, this is a corporate capitalism job. Like I'm just trying to make my money, go home and that's no offense. I love the work I do. It's great. But like, I'm just trying to make my money and go home, go play video games and go play with my cats. Like, that's
Yeah.
all I want to do.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I mean, I'm a big fan of the phrase like work to live, don't live to work.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. I make sure to clock out on time as much as
Oh
I
yeah.
can. Not always,
It's
but as
it's
much.
it's really interesting that you mentioned that you have different pronouns at work. Because I was actually
Mm.
thinking about this because I have different pronouns at work, but for
Uh,
completely different reasons. Because so I work in the Canadian government where it's
oh.
bilingual. So my pronouns at work are she, elle,
Oh.
because I want them to they have to be in French as well. Um,
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
yeah, and so like a lot of people just do like she, her slash elle, la, but I'm just nah, it's
Mm.
the short version. She, elle, there, done. But I only use that at work because I don't
Mm.
use French in my day-to-day life. So like
Yeah.
it's interesting. But yeah, the whole like not being misgendered. I mean, it's really depends on your workplace environment because like I mean, I've been on leave for a couple of years now and I'm just going back to work. But it's still like everyone just kind of works from home still. Like there are
Mm-hmm.
people coming into the office, but like I'm going into meetings with like just my manager and everyone else is online.
Yeah.
So it's been, I mean, I've been anticipating all these problems, or not necessarily problems, but challenges, with regards to my transition because like the last time I was in the office, I was presenting mail.
Mm.
So it's just like, well, there's going to be a bunch of people there that don't know that I transitioned, and they're just like, hey, what you look different. So
Do
yeah,
you think
that's
any of them are going to have any of them been like, who's the new girl? I
well,
thought
because
we were
I
on a
don't
hiring
really
freeze. Who's
talk
the
to
new girl?
anyone. I don't talk to anyone at work because, like, I mean, it's I work for a statistic agency, and it's like, it's a bunch of nerds who are on the spectrum. Nobody talks to nobody.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, yeah.
The autism is strong.
Yes, I mean, like, I'm
Team.
very introverted, but compared to some other folks there, I'm very extroverted. So, now, how would you say you're making your company more queer friendly and inclusive?
Oh, we do a lot. Oh my God. We do a lot. There's a lot to fix, I think. And especially because, again, it's a company full of cis white het people.
Mhm.
I feel like, folks who are outside of the community don't really know what to fix. Like, even if they were like really strong allies who like wanted to help and all that, um, it's really hard to know what needs to be updated and what's like priority and what like really needs to be pushed for in a company. And so I used to be the lead of the trans inclusion committee, but now I'm just the lead of the Pride Employee Resource Group, the LGBTQIA plus
Mm.
Pride Employee
That
Resource Group,
sounds
the TS.
bigger. That sounds like a bigger
Yeah.
team.
The Trans Inclusion Committee is like a subcommittee of that,
Mm.
which focuses on trans identity, but then the Pride ERG focuses on like queer identity in
Yeah.
general. And if you see me picking hair out of my mouth, it's Tofu's hair. I'm so sorry. My cat hair just floats around.
It's
Um,
fine.
but we do a lot in pushing for policies, pushing for pushing just the company in general on a lot of different things. So like a couple of like quote unquote little things that we've done are like scrubbing through all of our data and all of our documentation in HR, like our benefits plans, anything that's kind of like posted company wide, anything that like has to do with any policies, to make all the language gender neutral, because there used to be a lot of like, she slash he or the mother slash father and things like that, like little things like that, that like is just like small, like quote unquote small, not really small when you're thinking about it, but
They're
for other
microaggressions.
folks, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we've going through and fixing all those. We went through all of our documentation. Like it took us forever because we have so much. It's
Mhm.
like a large company. And so we scrubbed through all of that to make everything more gender inclusive. And even like wrote a trans inclusive communications guide for folks at the company to
Nice.
be like, okay, instead of using she slash he, use something else, please, and thank you.
Yeah.
Like, don't gender anything. Just like make everything as gender neutral as possible. If you even need to add a gender to it, which you mostly do not in any of your documentation. So going through and doing that, we do a lot in terms of education. A lot in terms of education. We've written a lot of articles, like internal articles for the company about like the anti-trans legislation that's going on, about trans healthcare, puberty blockers and their importance. Talking about articles talking about, like even just like lighthearted things like queer musicians, for instance, or like trans musicians. That way, there's at least content not related to our trauma, because I feel like a lot of the time we all that's the main thing people expect from us, right? It's like, excuse me, like talking about our trauma and things like that. And so we've tried to make sure that we have like a decent balance of both, fun things like finding musicians, artists, like D&D creators, things like that, who are trans, queer in some kind of way, versus, the heavier things like legislation and, the athletic policies and stuff in high schools, to make sure that there's at least still folks who like at least still some learning aspects, right? Because that stuff is definitely really needed for a lot of different folks at the company. And so we've done those kind of articles. We bring in speakers, like we get a specific fund. All the ERGs get a certain amount of money every year to put towards things for the ERG. So we brought in different speakers to talk about like queer topics, which has been really nice. We've like advocated, and well, we used to have a couple of offices, and a lot of them are closing now because everyone's kind of also worked from home. But before the pandemic, and before offices started closing down, we pushed for gender neutral bathrooms to be added and constructed in a lot of our buildings and a lot of our like office spaces, which we were able to do, which is also really exciting. We recently, which I'm super excited about, we recently added chosen family to bereavement leave. Pushed for a while about that, gotten some high execs to kind of push for that, to make it
Oh, I
clear
love
that it
that.
was important.
It's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm very excited about that, because we had people who had been denied like bereavement leave, which is
Yeah.
really not good. Like it's not good at all. Like we had folks being
Yeah.
denied bereavement leave during a time of extreme stress, right? So that hopefully is going to end up being a really good thing for folks who probably don't realize, because a lot of folks don't realize how important chosen family is. And it's not even like in our community also, right? Like
Of
chosen
course.
family
Yeah.
is a thing that's big in a lot of marginalized communities
Absolutely.
specifically. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so we did that. And most recently, so our company, like like our standards, our inclusivity standards are based on the HRC's guidelines, which is the Human Rights Campaign. It has like a corporate equality index that tells you things that your company has to do in order to like make it on the list of inclusive companies, or like most inclusive places to work or whatever. And so something we've been working on for that, because it's now one of the guidelines, is having some sort of like document, some sort of guidelines to help trans folks at work, to say, like if you're transitioning at work, here are the people you should reach out to. Here are the people who could help you specifically with your transition. Here's like the benefits you'll have. Here are like if you're experiencing misgendering, dead naming, anything like that, these are the people that could help you with it. And things like that. And so that's also something we've been working on, because whenever I came out, we didn't have anything like that. And so whenever I was trying to figure out, how to change my name, especially because I'm not doing like I didn't have a legal name change, and I probably will never as a non-binary person, just for me, myself, and I, for safety reasons. Like I had no idea what to do, like because there was nothing. And like it's nice that we can use preferred names at work. Like it's really like not a lot of places will let you do that, especially because there are so many systems that we have that very specifically need legal names, because we work a lot with like contractors. We work with CMS, which is the Center of Medicaid Services, and a lot of like governmental organizations that need legal names. And so for like all the chosen name stuff, like it was really hard figuring out, where do I go? Who do I need to reach out to? Like, and things like that. And so we're finishing that up. Hopefully, it's been going on since May, since we've been writing it, and we're finally through like the hopefully last phase of editing to push that out, which we're hoping is going to be a super great resource for folks who might look into or might be thinking about transitioning in the workplace. And in addition to that, we've like created like misgendering guidelines, dead naming guidelines, to make sure that folks know that like if they're experiencing it either from clients or people internally at the company, like they're able to go to HR, they're able to reach out to project leads to like talk to the clients, which is a really big thing, I think, because that can, risk contract, like continuing contract work and things like that. So just like for folks to know that they've kind of got those resources for them. And then one last thing that we're doing is like, because even though we can use preferred names at work, so I was kind of a guinea pig for this, which was really fun. Even though we can use preferred names at work, there's still a lot of people who can see my dead name. Like there's still a lot of systems who can see my legal name. They're able to
Mm,
access it. And that is a really big danger, right? I'm a very openly out trans person because I don't really have that choice since I started the company as a cis woman, right? But for folks who are just coming into it, or for folks who are stealth because safety reasons, like having people being able to easily and very like openly access their legal names versus like the name that they see on like the intranet, or like the name that they see, the preferred name they see, um, that little flag can really be dangerous for a lot of folks. And so we've been trying to work with all of our ITS folks to try to fix that in all of our systems as
mhm,
well, which has been a long journey.
mm,
It's gonna take a long time, but that's another thing that we're trying to do.
yeah.
So yeah, a lot of stuff that we're, and actually another thing we're currently working on that I completely forgot about is we just started this, but we've been trying to proactively address some issues that might arise because of the 303 decision that came about, where that person from Colorado, that designer, was able to pretty much say, no, I'm not going to make something, not going to design a website for this queer couple. And so that gives a lot, the way that it was like ruled gives a lot of, what's the word? A lot of like vagueness to who can be discriminated against, why they can be discriminated against, and like when this might happen. And so something that we're starting to do is thinking about all the different ways, that this can affect employees at the company, and trying to figure out like how to kind of combat that, if someone ends up, being turned away for like travel accommodations because they're transgender or something like that, can they go book a different hotel that's above the government rates? Will they have the support from, high execs to be like, okay, like I couldn't use this taxi service because they said no to me. I'm going to book someone that's more expensive, and it's going to come out of the company's pocket and not my pocket, because it
Mhm.
shouldn't, because like I'm being
Yeah.
Yeah.
discriminated against.
Yeah.
So we're
And it's a
working through
work trip.
that.
It's not a personal
Exactly.
vacation.
Yup, exactly. And because we're a healthcare research company, a lot of the folks travel for like conferences. Like a
Mhm.
lot of people travel for conferences. They have to travel to go meet clients. They have to travel to go do like in-person surveys, things like that. And so we're trying to really work with a lot of folks across, every place that this could touch at the company,
Yeah.
to try to make sure that we have those proactively before it happens, because I don't want to have to sit there and figure it out after it happens to someone. And so we're trying to
Right.
and that too. So it's a lot. It's a lot.
I I have two sort of small follow-ups with just some of the threads that you just dropped.
Yeah. So that
I'm
was a
sure we
lot.
could spend it was great. It was great. I'm sure we could spend an hour like on teasing apart
Yeah.
everything you just said, because it was so potent, which I love, right? Like
Oh,
you're
good,
here
good.
being an expert. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, so this show is all about having like um people kind of info dump about their special interests.
Mm, I
So
love it's
like,
great.
yeah, we're very, very info dump friendly space here. Um, so you mentioned that folks kind of go to conferences and things. Right now, my wife is at the Out and Equal conference that's happening. Is anyone at your organization going to that? Have you heard of Out and Equal?
I have not, because I don't personally travel for work as a
Yeah,
program. Like I'm a programmer, so I don't generally go and do that because I don't
yeah,
present or anything.
yeah.
But we hit a or excuse me, not hit. We end up going to, the company does end up going to most of the
Yeah,
conferences. So I bet you, I'm gonna have to Google that later, but I bet that they're there.
yeah. Um, so it's in Florida this year, which for those
Ooh.
listening, if you don't know the like historical or cultural context of this moment in time, Florida is a dumpster fire for any trans person to be in right now. They're doing all kinds of
Mhm.
Mm,
things with like
That's
it's like
putting it
illegal to
very
like take
mildly.
HRT and like,
yeah. Mhm.
just like all this stuff. And so I wanted to share a bit about how we had to negotiate that, because it's kind of related to what you were just saying about, if someone's trans and they're getting denied
Mhm.
stuff, what do you do? And so it's like, okay, like we don't want you to get arrested for being trans in Florida. And
Mhm.
so like we requested like security, like
Ooh, yeah.
gate to gate security, like from the
Mhm.
airport to the hotel. Because like Disney World is this like little pocket of gay in the middle of Florida. Um, Saturday Night Live did a great skit about that, but that's slightly more off topic than everything else I'm trying to say right now. And so so she asked, like, we need security, we need, we need a doctor who can help us if trans people especially have any medical needs, if something goes weird with our HRT or whatever, like we need our own dedicated physician that the company pays for. And she
Mhm.
works for a Fortune 100 company as a senior principal software engineer.
Oh,
So she like,
yeah. Yeah. They
she's
got the
worked there for
money.
15
Like,
years.
Yeah.
They can afford it.
they
And
can do
so,
that.
because they
Yeah.
wanted her to go because she's on the Pride ERG for her
Mhm.
company.
Oh, yeah.
And that's part of why she's there. And so that's how I can do this is she does that. Yeah.
Works out well. Like, this is
It
also really
does.
needed, you know?
So I asked her last night, like, how did it go? Because I hadn't heard from her and I was sweating. I was like,
Yeah.
did you get arrested? And that's why you didn't call me? Like, what's
Oh,
happening?
God.
I called her and she answers the phone. She's like laughing with her friends at work. And I'm like, oh,
Oh, my
yay.
gosh.
Immediate relief. And she told me that it was wonderful. Like they had a security person like pick them up. They handed all the trans people that flew in for the event from their company. Like there's a key card. They went up to a hotel room that was within the airport so they could use the
Oh,
bathroom, like
nice.
have a mask break, have some water, whatever, have a snack, that kind of stuff. Pick up some sundries along the way that's more affordable than at the resort itself. And then, we're brought to Disney World. And so now they're having this conference, and I think she's going to speak on stage in front of 3,500 people on Wednesday
Wow.
or something.
That's exciting. Oh, my
Have a little
gosh.
2-minute speech she's been preparing and all of that. I like shined her shoes for her before she left, so they'd be extra sparkly and gay. So, anyways, so it's just like, but yeah, like as trans people, we have to think about all this extra stuff just to
Mhm.
participate and exist in the corporate world. And it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
honestly, we
I
should be
mean, I've
paid
been to a couple
more.
conferences for
We should
my
be
work
paid
too, and
more.
I'm just like
Mhm.
looking at the map of the states. I'm like, well, cross all these ones out.
Yeah.
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 So yeah,
So far
no,
so good. But it's a whole thing trying to navigate that.
Mhm.
Um,
Mm.
yeah.
It's really nice
I
that the company
really
at least like thinks about that and so like and is willing to
well,
accommodate for that.
they didn't think about it. They asked
Not
her to
bad, yeah.
go, and my answer was no. And then I said, well, let me not say no. Let's think about it. And then we
Mhm.
the two of us sat and thought, and I'm like, here's our list of demands. Like
Mhm.
they didn't agree to everything. They did not agree to a bulletproof vest or a security
Mm.
guard for each trans person, but they did
Mm.
agree to a lot of the other stuff, like paying for a hotel so that there's a safe bathroom for people to use. That's an expense, right? Like
Yeah.
Mhm.
at the
Mhm.
airport in Florida near Disney World, like that's not a cheap hotel room. So
Mhm.
anyway, but yeah, I even remember when she sent that email to her boss or boss's boss or whoever, his response to her was like, I have read this email multiple times and it is so like helpful and dense and full of good information. Like I need to sit with this some
Good.
more and make
Yeah.
sure that we can, action on as much as possible. And so
Mhm.
I have really appreciated seeing people kind of step up to it. Like one, it sucks that
Mhm.
our community as a whole, as North Americans, is so transmissic that we have to plan like this. And on
Mhm.
the flip side, it is relieving to see, big companies doing that. And she talks about the HRC index too. So I'll
I
make sure
love
that
it. Yeah.
I'll make sure we link that in the show notes as a resource for folks to go look at.
Now you began your transition after having worked there for a while. How did other employees react to that?
Yeah, I think most of them were pretty good about, switching over the name really easy. Like the name was the easiest thing. Like it was really nice. I was actually really surprised at how
Mm.
quickly folks were just like, all right, that name's gone. Here's the new name. Especially because I had worked with a lot of them for at least like a year or two before I like fully switched over my name because I definitely had a time, like I had a period of time where, I still had my dead name, I still had my legal name that I was using, and that I didn't switch my preferred name over to anyone besides like the Pride ERG specifically. I think I did like 2 or 3 months where I was using Oliver only in the Pride ERG and like only in meetings with those specific people because I was comfortable enough and knew that they were going to be okay. And it was going to be safe enough to have a different name while I was figuring everything out. And then eventually switched everything over once I figured out how to, how to change my name in all of our systems because it was confusing and horribly. And there was no guidance anywhere.
Yeah.
Especially because it's a preferred
I
name change
feel
and
you
not
there.
illegal.
I feel you there as someone who had to do that multiple times.
Yeah. And it's hard because like not all systems are set up for that either. Depending on how it's programmed in, because we have so many differences. Like, you know, we've got our timekeeping
there's
system,
the
we've
IT
got
system, and
payroll.
then there's the HR system, and then there's the payroll system, and then there's the email system, and then
we've got the external communications area, then the internal
and none of them talk to each other, so you have to do it on all of them individually.
Oh my God. Yeah, when we first had that meeting with ITS, like we had a meeting with ITS with HR with like a couple of like the leads, I guess, the people who like watch over everyone else in those systems. And whenever we first had that meeting of being like, okay, how plausible is this? Because you know we want to make sure that like we can get preferred names everywhere. Like nowhere should anyone ever see someone's legal name because right now there's still places we've been able to switch over a couple of spaces that were very easy fixes because those fields already were there in the systems. But there are so many systems that do not have it. So like anytime I have like timekeeping, dead names everywhere, legal names are everywhere. Anytime like my supervisors switch over, which has happened a couple times because we're not allowed to have supervisors at the same level as you. And because I've been like promoted a couple times, like I keep having to switch supervisors. Every time we get supervisor things, they all see my dead names also. So even people who didn't know me before transitioning now know my dead name, which is great. And so it's very fun. Like there is like about 80 to 90 systems. Whenever we like started talking to them, they were like looking through and like making documentation of every single place that they were going to have to look into. And there's like 80 or 90 little systems because there's also a different travel system, a different pay system, like everything. And not everywhere is set up to have preferred names over legal names because the people who are setting these systems up might be external contractors who don't think about these things. No one thinks about these things. And so what was the question? It's transitioning at work after working there for a while. That was completely but
I mean, hey, you said you go on tangents as much as you like. It's totally fine. But no, I had a very similar experience where it's like I've had to change things on multiple systems multiple times. I remember like before I did my legal name change, I was trying to get like a preferred name change for my email, and I was told it's like, no, it has to be your legal name. I'm like, no, that's not true because there are plenty of cisgender people that use nicknames for their emails or they use their middle name instead of their first name. So like, I'm like, no, I know for a fact that I can use a preferred name. So you better change it.
Oh my gosh. Hopefully you were able to eventually get it changed. But like, that's the thing. Like so many people do that already.
Yeah. So like I did all that for my preferred name, but like there are some of our systems like you have to use your legal name. So for instance, payroll or HR, they have to use your legal name. But then I changed my legal name recently. So then I had to go do all that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And it's also stressful because like for us, we also, work with like we contract out and we work with like CMS and like the EUA system, enterprise users, something. I don't know what most of our acronyms stand for, but a lot of different systems like for like CMS and things like that need legal names because it's working with like people's like physical like social security numbers, healthcare addresses, like all that kind of stuff. And so there's some places where we literally just cannot change. So like every time I'm like staffed on a new project that has me having to go through these processes to get access to their systems, it's like I always constantly have to ask them, like, what name? Because I've got to out myself again. I'm like, what name do you need? Like, do you need preferred? Because they just put name. And I'm like, I don't know if that means preferred name. I don't know if that means like legal name. Like, and I just have to sit there and it's like a whole little like whirlwind in my brain of like, should I just put Oliver? That it's like suddenly comes back rejected because the system can't find Oliver Johnson. And then I'm like, oh, wait, it's this name. It's like, there's like so many little things like that folks don't realize happen.
Like, I mean, for a while, I was putting in my legal name in brackets, Miranda.
Oh, yeah. That's
so like, that's like when I go pick up my prescriptions, that's what it says.
Oh, that's a good
Yeah.
idea. I'm gonna start doing that in some places. Oh, but yeah,
I
in
like that.
general, it's been pretty good. Like I've been, well, with the name, it's been lit. Like it's been pretty decent with the name, you know. Most of the systems now, or I shouldn't say most, like a lot of the systems that I see, because I don't travel much or at all for the company. At least, or I can see my preferred name, all that stuff, which is good. There's some things that they've got to fix that have legal names still, but people socially were really good about making that switch over really quickly. Which was really nice, but it's just the pronouns now where, you know, I'm never going to be able to use just they, them pronouns at work just for my own safety reasons. Like they're never
Mm,
going to get it. And I'd much rather be misgendered as a he than misgendered as a she, right? Because
that's
that feels
fair.
less crappy. um,
Yeah.
That's
and
absolutely
so,
fair.
yeah, and because I've got the quote unquote man name of Oliver now,
Hmm.
it's and also I, you know, my voice is a lot deeper because of HRT, so it's not like an immediate like, oh, that's a woman
Yeah.
anymore, which is nice. Like it's a lot more ambiguous, I think.
Hmm.
Like with me being off video constantly, like at least I get heed. Mostly it's he, unless it's in very specifically the trans inclusion committee, the pride ERG, and very specific people who like know that I prefer they, them, and like are good about that. But as a general whole, I mean, I mostly just get he, him still, which I'll take. I'll take, you know,
Yeah. I mean,
a
it's like,
capitalism corporate job, you
I mean,
know?
on one hand, it's like you shouldn't have to fight for
Yeah.
like just the basic human dignity of
Yeah.
being of having your right name and right pronouns, but it's also it's
Mhm.
like there's a lot of battles to fight. Like you got to pick
Yeah,
which ones
I'm
you want to
tired.
fight. So yeah, and you
Yeah.
may not have the energy to fight that particular
Mhm.
battle. So you know, I definitely respect your choice in doing that. So, but everyone kind of has to like figure that out
Mhm.
for themselves. Like it may be more important just
Yeah.
to others, or others may have more energy to fight those battles. But
Mhm.
there's no like one solution that works for everyone. It's and just like there's no one gender for everyone. It's like we all have our own individual journeys and we all have to kind of go through them in our own way.
I'm wondering, Tofi, if there's any sort of documentation about like a checklist, like everything that needs to get
Mm.
updated if someone changed their name. Because I wrote something like that for myself. I took notes myself when I
Mm.
changed my stream handle because I went from being
Yeah.
Dungeon Meowster to being Gender Meowster. And there's
Mhm.
all these places. It took me months to find all the spots that it was wrong. I mean, we just updated our logo and it's mixed logos
Mhm.
everywhere right now. So that's a whole
Mhm.
separate nightmare. But um, I actually wrote a guide for any other streamer who's like, oh, because it's like, oh, I changed it on Twitch, but what about Steam? Did you remember to do it on Steam?
Mhm.
Did you remember
Oh
to
my
do it
god,
on
yeah.
all of your
Mhm.
socials, including this one over here that you forgot you had? Or like,
Mhm. Your pitch deck, like
yeah, your pitch deck, is it in the
Yeah.
about section?
Mhm.
In addition to the handle? Yeah. What about your
Yeah.
Discord server? What about anyway? So that information, it's on my Ko-fi if anyone's hearing and interested later. It's available, pay what you want, which includes free. But if you have some
Mhm.
bucks to throw our way for taking the time to write it all down, that's helpful. But yeah, I wonder, like, you said there's 90 something things. Is there documentation about that? Like maybe
Yeah,
it's
that's a good
incomplete
question.
documentation.
Yeah, that is definitely something that we wrote down in the gender transition guidelines that we're hopefully going to have finished by the end of this year at the
Yeah.
very least. Again, it's been going since May and it's been
Mm,
a lot.
yeah.
So that's definitely something we included in the gender transition guidelines whenever we started writing it, which was really nice because, you know, since I had just started kind of going through that process, I sat down and I am also very, very much a documenter. And I went through and every single time someone reached out to me and being like, why is this name different? Like, why is it not Oliver? Like, we should get that fixed somewhere. I would like write it down that way. You know,
Hmm.
we had that at least written down somewhere. So that's
Yeah.
definitely part of it now is it's very much like the whole way we framed it is, you know, everyone's transition is different. So like here are places you
Mhm.
could think about if you would like to update rather than like you have to update these.
Yeah.
So a lot like we definitely have that. And especially because it gets a little tricky too, because as a research organization, we have publications, we have clients, we have like a lot of
Right.
different places where these are updated, like resumes and resumes that specifically go out to clients when we're trying to take on proposals and like trying to get work in. And so there are so many, and like organizational charts for every single different project, because you might get staffed on between 1 to 10 projects depending on how much of your time they need. And so we
Yeah.
have so many things written down about, like, look at all your resumes, look at like every single publication you've ever done, like it's, yeah,
Yeah.
we wrote down all of that. So folks know, because it is overwhelming. I feel like people don't think of it, even when people go through like last name changes, like it's a lot to go through. So I'm
Mhm.
hoping like that'll help them at least too, of having this. It's not just for trans folks, it's for anyone who goes through any sort of name change, even last name changes. So yeah, we're hoping that that'll end up being a lot more helpful, because there are constantly places where I look and it's like, and someone reaches out and they're like, "Is this you, or should we change this?" And I'm like, "Crap, yeah, we need to change that somewhere somehow."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
No, just thinking
there's
about there's a lot of things out there on the internet that have my dead name on them, and I'm just
Yeah.
I just kind of accepted it. It's like, you know what? If you got a couple brain cells to rub together, you can figure out what my dead name is. It's fine. So it doesn't really cause me that much discomfort. But yeah, it's a huge pain to have to
Mhm.
update everything, and takes a long time. And you don't just get dead name once; it happens over and over and over again. So it's
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Now, what would you say is your advice to other gender diverse people who aren't quite sure if they can be out at work?
Um, oh, see, I always feel like I'm a pessimist in these,
Mm,
like in general, because I do tend to prioritize safety. So even out and about, like my poor sweet roommate will go fight anyone who ever tries to, misgender me in the real world, IRL, even at stores and stuff. Like they're like, "Do I need to fight them?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's fine." I love Valkyrie so much. But like
I love
I
that. I love
prioritize.
the energy, though.
Yeah, I'm like, it's very appreciated. Like, it's very
Yes.
appreciated because it still constantly happens. People still constantly view me as a woman. And so I am very much the person who is constantly just kind of like, I'm going to prioritize safety over anything else, because I personally
As
do
you
not
should.
have the brain energy. Yeah. And like, even if like, they're willing to listen and like be educated, like, I am tired. I don't want to educate folks. I just want to exist, especially these people
Yeah.
I'm probably never
And
going to see again in
it's
my
not your
life.
job. It's not your job to
Exactly.
educate people.
I'm not getting paid for this. Thank you.
Yes.
they can
So I'm
listen to
very
this
much,
podcast instead.
yeah, exactly. Right. Or like whatever you post on TikTok, the Trans 101 series that you're
Yeah.
doing, that one.
Aw.
So I'm also very
I'm
much
like
just kind of like,
I'm like honored that you've even heard of that. That's cool.
I have, you do a lot of good work, excuse you.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you. And so I am always just kind of like, if you don't think that you're going to be safe, and that's like in anything either, like
Mm,
even, I'm not out to a lot of folks I'm not out to family, anything like that, because I know it's dangerous. And so I am very much like you are the one who knows what is best for you. If you do not think that you're going to be safe, if you want to take that risk, that's fine. Like we're like, at least you'll have a community to support you. Like we're going to be here to support you in that. Like we're very like, we'll do what we can. But just like really think about it and just make sure that, I don't know, that you're going to be able to get through it if it doesn't go well. Like I'm very lucky. I know I'm very, very, very privileged to work in the place that I do, that I'm able to do all these. Like they're willing to, change a bunch of policies and things that we're pushing for. But not everyone is like that. And I'd rather you be
mm,
alive and happy with the community that you have than, not in a job, and even if it's a crappy job. We live under capitalism. I probably wouldn't ever, if I changed jobs, I would not be out, because unless I knew it was very specifically a trans, like if it had a lot of trans people, or it already had all these policy put into place and things like that, or like I knew that they were willing to, just for my own safety reasons. And so main thing is like, if it's going to be safe for you, like if it's going to be safe for you, then do it. We'll support you. But if it's okay not to be out to everyone, like you
of
don't
course.
have to be out to everyone. um yeah, that was a long brain ramble.
Yeah, no,
It's
no,
it's all
that's
good stuff.
wonderful. I mean, you should always be prioritizing your own safety. As someone has once told me, you got to take care of yourself because no one else is going to do it.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, so yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Let's talk about Shrek.
Yes. So
So
I mentioned
excited.
earlier, I have never seen Shrek. So this is
Get your Shrek
I'm
emojis ready, chat.
I'm
Get
yes.
them ready.
Hurt.
Get all
I'm
your
hurt.
get all your green ogre gremlin.
All the ogres.
Yes.
Any mud donkeys.
Yes. But
Hats.
I am interested to hear what the intersection between Shrek and our topic of the day is.
It's so good. It's so good.
Oh, chat has just lit up like a Christmas tree.
Chat's obliging. Chat's obliging. Yes, son, you do
This
win.
makes me so happy.
Body.
Oh my god. What have we done?
We've unlocked the
It's
gremlin core.
beautiful.
The goblin core. The
Yeah,
ogre
this is
core?
Goblin Core, Shrek Core, actually.
A Shrek core.
core. Yes.
Oh my
I
god.
love it so much. It's so good.
The music in that movie, in both the movies, the first and the second one. I can't remember the soundtrack in the third or the fourth or the fifth one. I'm sorry. Actually, I don't think there's a fifth yet. Soundtrack in the first two are even if you don't know Shrek, you need to listen to the soundtracks. They are that good. There's even a Shrek the musical. Like that's how big of an icon he is. So,
Wow.
I need to see
Yeah.
Shrek the musical. Where is that? Is it on YouTube?
probably is uploaded on YouTube
I
somewhere.
mean, most of my exposure to Shrek has been through like Shrek memes. Like the
That is
Shrek
a good
up,
way.
Shrek is life.
Yeah.
Very memeable.
Yep.
And it's
Mhm,
very like,
mhm.
oh,
Yeah.
this is not my jam.
Fun fact is so they were working on Prince of Egypt at the same time they were working on Shrek. Like they came out around the same time. And so
Mhm.
if animators were doing badly or something, or not like if people got angry at the animators who were working on the Prince of Egypt, they would just send them over to the Shrek side and they would force them to do Shrek stuff.
Oh my god. Oh
Like
my
you
Which I
get
think is
to draw
beautiful.
the
Yeah, yeah.
in
Shrek
the
was
mud.
animation prison.
Yeah, which I think makes it
prison, no.
funnier. It's like just a giant meme.
Oh my god. So
Yeah.
tell
Oh
us
my
tell us
God.
all about Shrek. Tell us.
Okay.
I mean, I want to know
How it's an
Listen,
what the
allegory
connection
for
is
queer
between.
and trans
Yeah, I want to know what the
experience.
connection is.
Oh, okay. So for the one of you who hasn't seen Shrek yet,
Yes.
to
I
not
feel
calling
personally
you
attacked
out,
here.
you should. Pretty much the whole story is lonely ogre. Everyone's ostracized him, thinks he's a big ugly. I don't want to use ableist term, big ugly silly ogre, and everyone's just like, this ogre, because of who they are as a person, is this horrible creature who needs to not be around other people and all this other stuff. And it's
Yeah,
literally a
very relatable.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Literally a movie filled with fairy tale creatures. Like in this world, there are canonically fairies, talking donkeys. Well, actually, no, I think donkey's the only one who talks. Fairies, leprechauns, mice that talk, a big bad wolf that talks. There are literally fairy tale creatures throughout
Sure.
the entirety of
Full of
this,
furries,
along
just
with
loaded
yes.
with furries.
Yeah, if you watch Shrek and love Shrek, you are also a furry, I think, and you need to unpack that.
Maybe that's why I never watched it.
anyways. Disappointing. You'll learn stuff about yourself. But it's just a whole
Here, wait.
movie of this ogre.
This is the moment to bust this out.
Yes,
Oh.
listen.
Now I feel left out because I don't have cat ears.
Or you need
I just
some.
got them at the cat festival last month.
There's a cat festival?
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I would die if I went to a cat festival.
I'll be so happy. Oh my gosh.
There was
I would
so
be
much
ha-
great
I mean, I
cat
would die
merch.
happy, but I would die.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna Google that later. Shrek. So pretty much
Yes.
it's about a story of, this lonely ostracized creature, ogre, who is just alone and very much is it very much internalizes that of I need to be alone. I've got no one else to rely on. You don't even see his family throughout the first meeting, the first movie at all. I don't think even in the second movie, I don't think you see any of his family members at all either. I don't think it's until the third or fourth movie where you actually see that Shrek has siblings and a family and parents and all that, or cousins. And so it's very much internalized, I am a horrible person for being who I am, for things I cannot change, right? Literally being an ogre. You can't, it's just part of him. He cannot change the fact that he's a freaking ogre. And then he meets, and it's a chosen family theme because he starts meeting a donkey who will not shut up and will want and wants to go with him to go rescue the stereotypical beautiful Fiona princess who's got like the long beautiful hair, but guess what, she also turns into an ogre at night. And so it's very much like also like an internalized thing of like she was locked away for this part of her that she also cannot control. Like she was cursed as a baby to be this beautiful woman everyone wants at the morning, and then at night she turns into this ugly ogre, an ugly beast. And it's a very much like a story of, Shrek going on this adventure with Donkey, this new chosen family that he's found. And where Donkey like ends up meeting a dragon and falling in love with it's wild. If you're into the monster stuff, dragon and Donkey. But like then they go off on this meeting, they save Fiona for like the evil capitalistic, Lord Farquaad, the king who has to
the
marry
little
a
short
princess.
guy. I know him. I've seen him before.
Yes. And fun fact, Lord Farquaad's name was because the person that they designed him off was a horrible person. And so they called him Lord F-Wad.
Right.
Lord Farquaad, Lord F-Wad. So that's how that name came about.
That tracks. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's a whole story about, Shrek going on this adventure of like self-love and really like realizing that he's not the problem. Everyone else kind of sucks. And then rescuing this princess where, she's trying to keep hidden that she turns into an ogre at night. And then all of a sudden, Donkey finds out that she turns into an ogre at night. And he's like, I don't know why that's such a problem for you. You're still the same person. You're wonderful. Like, we love you. And then, finally, like Shrek realizing and finding out that she turns into like an ogre. And he's like, you're beautiful. Like, what are you talking about? Like, why do you hate the ogre part of you? And then eventually she decides to become an ogre forever. And so it's very much a story about like, self-love, realization, like chosen family, finding people and finding community for people who are like similar to you, but also not similar to you. And like sharing these experiences of being ostracized, pushed away, because Donkey also was ostracized, being sold off, pushed away from his owner, right? And so I feel like it's just a lot of tropes, of like chosen and found family, like hating who you are because of what everyone else is saying about you, and then realizing that, everyone else is the problem, not you, and learning to love yourself and like, just finally being who you are and being happy in who you are. And so it's just like, it's not, I think it's like generally like a marginalized person, trope, right? Like I think any of the marginalized folks in here can relate to that in some way. Yeah. But my brain just pegs it as a queer, thing. So
yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense.
That's Spark Notes to me. Yeah, I love it. It's so good. And it's so well animated for a 2000 movie. Like the animation is surprisingly like amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love Shrek.
So you've like really adopted that. Your Twitter name or nickname at least is Shrekhussy.
It is.
Right?
It is Shrekhussy.
It seems like a majority, if not all of your Twitch emotes are all Shrek themed.
They are. They're Shrek dumpling themed, like there's Shrek Bow.
Shrek dumplings. Shrek Bow.
I mean, I'm not gonna judge you for leaning hard into a certain theme, because I lean hard into a very silly theme myself. So
it's so good.
Yes. I mean, all my stuff is Boss Nass from Star Wars branded.
Please. That's beautiful.
Mine's all
it's very Shrek adjacent.
Yes. Yeah. I love it. Like I love all of us just have a theme, and it's fantastic, and it's so fun. It's so fun.
Sunbury says the crossover between the Prince of Egypt team and the Shrek team suddenly helps clarify the quality of animation in Shrek for me.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, they're on par. They're really good. Right.
That's so fun.
Glad I can connect the two for you. I'm here for you.
I love that. Do you have any more Shrek factoids you want to drop before we ask our next question, which is not about Shrek?
No, I don't think any more. Not fun factoids. Shrek 5 has been rumored to come out for years, and it hasn't.
I was just going to say there's 5 of them?
Almost. I hope that they're working on 5. I think I will cry happy tears if they actually do end up dropping it. I don't know if they ever will, but I will be so I'm waiting for it. Wow.
I love it. Are there any Shrek video games?
And there actually are.
You streamed them?
No, I have not, because I got to figure out how to. I think there's definitely some, and I remember playing them as a child, and I don't remember what they're about, which it makes it fun for replaying them.
Yeah, Miriam says also, at least one of them is terrible.
Yeah, which I mean, yeah. that came out a while ago. There was a
Yeah.
Shrek DVD where there was a mini game at the end of it where Simon Cowell. So it was a mini game where it was like, the best singer or whatever, what was that? American Idol, Shrek American Idol on a very specific, I think it was like the Shrek 2 DVD where you like Donkey, the Three Blind Mice, the pigs, Shrek and Fiona, and also Prince Charming would sing. And then you as the person, use the remote controller, the remote wielder, got to choose who you thought, like you were a judge. You had to choose who should be crowned American Idol, Swamp's Idol. And if you chose the wrong person, quote unquote, wrong person that Simon Cowell didn't like, he would be like, no, incorrect. I'm the idol. And then he would get up and start singing. And I just don't know how they got Simon Cowell to get into that movie like that. It was so funny.
That's so funny.
Fun fact, not a fun fact, but that was something that was in one of the DVDs.
There's a Shrek Mario Kart clone.
What?
Oh my God.
Is it like Swamp Kart or something? Tell me more.
Of course there is.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Oh,
Shrek is so good. It's honestly like an icon. Like I feel like you can watch it at any time. Like even children now know what it is. I don't know. I think it's very what's the word? It's just a
All-Star
staple
Kart
that everyone
racing.
needs to hear. Yeah. I love that. That's so good.
God.
Did it come out like last month? What's happening? DreamWorks' new kart racer put Shrek back in the driver's seat. DreamWorks All-Star Kart Racing is overrun with trolls.
Oh my God, they're all probably just singing Shrek songs. That's probably what it is.
Oh my gosh, there's donkey racing in a dragon race cart.
Oh my God. Oh, that's cute.
It is cute.
I
There's
love
also
that.
Kung Fu Panda.
Oh,
This is
Kung Fu
so
Panda is
wild.
one of my favorites too. That one's so good.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, so that exists. Now we know.
Yeah,
Oh boy.
everyone's going to be on it next week.
I don't know if it's published yet or if it's just in development and they've announced it, but that's so
Thank
funny. Yeah,
you.
July 2023 was when this article came out.
That's amazing. Also, can we just appreciate all the onions and stuff in this? Oh my gosh. It's got trolls. There's so much in here. Dang.
It's we're just extra ADHD today, everyone. I hope you're
Oh, boy.
enjoying.
Yeah.
I am. It's fun.
It's late. Listen.
What's our next question? Let's see. Are there other movies that you love that can be interpreted through a queer lens?
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of sad because I interpret a lot of things through a queer lens because we don't have a lot of, well, at least when I was growing up, right, didn't have a lot of queer movies. So I feel like anything that had themes of like chosen family, anything that had themes of like, being the ostracized one and like learning to love yourself, those kinds of movies, my brain always just kind of is like, yeah, that's queer just because of those tropes. And so for those reasons, like I think Lilo and Stitch was a big one, finding chosen family as Stitch, little ostracized alien who people are trying to get, was one that I always loved because of that. I think even like Mulan was definitely one of the big ones for me, right? Very specifically because, we see her story, especially as like a Chinese person, like she was the first Asian Disney princess. I don't know if she was the first Asian one. She might not have been the first specifically Asian one, but she was, Chinese one. She might be. I think, I feel like she is. Because I remember my grandma telling me how she cried when she came out.
That's definitely a story you can read through.
Oh, yeah. Like the whole theme of
presenting
like,
herself as a man throughout the movie.
Right?
So.
Yeah, talking about how she's never going to be the woman that her parents want her to be and all this kind of stuff, which is probably something, maybe that was my origin story. Maybe that's what I should have realized. So definitely Mulan, especially that song Reflection, like all those lyrics are all very transcoded and I love it. It's so good. Oran High School Host Club was also another one. Like I really identified with the character Haruhi, which for folks who haven't seen Oran High School Host Club, it's pretty much about like they're high schoolers and she comes across a host club and she's dressed as a boy because those are the only clothes that she has, accidentally knocks over a vase. And then the people, the host club folks are like, oh, you've got to repay that. That was really expensive because it's a very rich, rich high school, whatever, for the elite. And they don't realize that she's, a girl. And they slowly realize it throughout the first episode. And they're like, wait a second. And she's like, I don't really care how y'all see me. Like, it's what's inside that matters. And so she's very, agender, gender nonconforming to my brain. That's another one where I very much am like, I don't know if she's canonically, gender nonconforming, but in my brain, like just her whole character and the lines that she has and the way that she views herself and gender identity and like how others perceive her of like just not caring is another one for me. I think Hotel Transylvania was another one because it was very much like all these outcast monsters, getting together and finding the chosen family with each other was another big one.
Oh my God. I'm such a huge sucker for like chosen family narratives.
Yeah, right. Like, oh, it's such a good one.
One of the reasons I love the Guardians of the Galaxy films is
oh my God.
it's just a bunch of like screw ups that get together and they find family in each other.
Yeah.
So I love stories about like misfit screw ups that like come together.
Mm-hmm. It's really good, especially
that's kind of how I see myself. I see myself as a misfit. So like.
Yes.
Like, hey, maybe if they can find family, maybe I can too.
Maybe I'm also worthy of love. Yeah. I love them so much. Yeah. Those are the main ones I think that pop out to my brain.
Awesome. I love that. I did want to segue into another form of media. So how are video games becoming more trans inclusive in terms of character creation and other aspects?
Yeah. I feel like for character creation, it's been nice because I feel like a lot of the times we're only given the choices when you're able to create a character of just she and he, right? Those are the two options that we get. And a lot of things are fixed depending on if you choose the man character or if you choose the woman character. And I feel like it's been nice seeing a lot of games come out that aren't like explicitly, locking what hair choices you can have, locking whatever, clothing choices, and being able to choose like a different body type with different pronouns. Like that has been a really nice thing to see. Something we don't really get. Yeah. There's also been, it's been nice to like have custom pronouns in some games. Like not a lot of them have them. And whenever we get to one of the later questions, I'll go very in depth about one of them that I love. But being able to choose pronouns outside of she, he, and also they, because even when we get like set pronouns where you get to like choose them, I feel like it's often just she, her, he, him, or they, them. Like they do not consider mixed pronouns at all. Like you can never choose, she and he, or like she and they, or he and they. Like there's no way to like mix and match them, which a lot of folks do have, do use multiple sets of pronouns, or even using neopronouns. I feel like I've seen like a handful that you can customize your pronouns to where you can actually put in, ZZer pronouns instead or fair pronouns rather than, the quote unquote base he, she, they ones. Granted, the nuance to that is like, even when people have custom pronouns, they get the very preset of like, do you want he, she, they, or custom, when they could just put custom, because you're kind of like reinforcing that idea that it's mostly he, she, and they, and like nothing else. But that's my soapbox.
I love the idea of having just like a prompt that's like conjugate pronouns.
Literally, yeah, because like as a programmer, you're gonna pull from those boxes anyway when they choose. So what's the difference of like them choosing she, he, they, or like the other option of just having the other option listed there? Like it's not that hard. Like
that would be difficult. People think about what are their pronouns, they conjugate it wrong, and they're getting his.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with some games, like if they have like voiceover dialogue, then like
that's fair.
It's I mean that's both a budgetary constraint and a technical constraint. But if you don't have any voiceover, I'm just like whatever.
Yeah,
How many extra lines of code could it possibly be?
Yeah.
I'm not a programmer. Yeah. Please don't hold me to that.
Yeah, and I gotta say, the statistical research programming I do is different than video game programming, but it's like the same general idea where you're assigning one variable, like he, another variable, like his, and then another variable, theirs or whatever. Like, and it's easy to swap that out depending on how you build your code base.
Yeah. You wrote in the chat, or let people change it on the fly in the settings. That is great because it's also plural inclusive.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
And like
And it's
someone else
nice.
might be fronting that day and their pronouns could be different that day.
And for folks who are
Mhm.
transitioning too, being able to like not have to completely start a entirely new session,
Oh,
because that's
oh,
irritating.
I have a whole thing about that because
Ooh.
so actually I have a whole it's a segment of a video that I've done, but there's a series of games called Saints Row, and in Saints Row, well, I've only played 3 and 4,
Mm,
but in
mhm,
those
mhm.
games, you have full freedom to change your character at any time in any way.
Ooh,
So,
nice.
I played those games like way before I figured out I was trans. And
Yeah.
both games, I started out as a male character and I
Mhm.
ended up as a female character.
Nice.
It was like,
Yes,
that's weird
that's
that that's happened
nice.
twice.
Please, maybe I should look into this more. I'll do it next year. Like, I'm busy this year.
Yeah,
But
I
no,
love
I'm
that.
definitely noticing a trend in video games being more inclusive of different gender
Mhm,
options. It's becoming more and more
mhm.
common. I mean, at the very least, it's becoming
Yeah.
more and more common to have like they them pronouns and not
Mhm.
necessarily have body types linked to gender.
Yeah.
Because like
And
a
that's
lot
like
of
the
like
bare
recent games that
minimum.
I played, it's like you just pick the body type and then you pick
Mhm.
the face and you can pick the hair and then you can pick your
Yeah.
pronouns. So it's
Mhm.
you have the
Mhm.
freedom to kind of build whatever character you want.
Mhm.
And the game I'm playing right now, you can even pick what genitalia you have.
Yeah, Baldur's Gate. I got a whole thing on Baldur's Gate here in a minute. Yeah. Yeah. So it is nice to like see that. It's also really nice to see games like starting to throw in like canonically trans characters too. That way folks don't have to speculate, right?
Hmm.
And Apex is one of those games, Apex Legends, which is a shooty pew pew gun game.
Yes.
Like they've done a good job with that. Like they came out in like 2019, I think is when it released, and one of their first legends is a very canonically non-binary character, and that's like specifically
Hmm.
in their lore of like this character is non-binary. They use they them pronouns. Do not misgender them. And every time someone like tries to come at them on Twitter, they're like, nope, they're non-binary. They them. Thank you very much. And I'm like, good. And even Catalyst, who came out last year, I think. She's fantastic. She's a trans woman, and she was created very specifically with the help from reps of GLAAD, and also trans devs, and is voiced by a trans woman as well. And also,
Mm.
whenever they were building her, like they were very much like, what kind of voice lines would be good for her? How can we make sure that like this is representative, not just like being like, oh, there's a trans woman in here and being done with it, but actually making sure that like,
Yeah.
there's like things that trans women like can see themselves in here. And so one of the one of the voice lines is kind of a riff off like the if you can't make your own estrogen, store bought is fine. And one of her voice lines is very specifically, if you can't produce your own liquid metals because her ability is producing liquid metals, store bought is fine, which is hilarious.
That's
And it's just
awesome.
so nice. Yeah, she's even got like voice lines where it's like, I'm the grim trans witch your parents warned you about, like making it very like specifically where you can like where people don't have to speculate about it. And that's
Hmm.
something that I've really appreciated too, of them, like confirming that way folks actually know that these characters in games are, trans, non-binary, things like that. That way we're not just like guessing. So
Hmm.
What are some games that tried to be trans inclusive but fell short?
yeah. I think two come like not like I guess I don't want to say fell short too much, because there aren't a lot of games I feel like that try to add trans rep um outside of like character builders. I feel like a lot of the trans rep we kind of get are like, oh, just like they're canonically trans in this. They're like either a side character or something else, but we don't really see like their journey. So I don't know a lot of games that specifically have that. But in terms of character creation, um, I know Palia just came out, and I know that they've got they at least have the options to choose, she, they, or he pronouns. So they've got that option, and it's not specifically linked to a certain body type that you choose. The clothes, you can choose any kind of clothes, no matter the body type you choose. You got the same like clothing, hair, makeup options, things like that. But like a lot of games with character creation kind of lean into the idea of like, if you choose this body type, you're going to have the strong jaw. Like if you choose the body type that have boobies, you're obviously going to have like a thin face. You're going to be like a little slimmer. Your hips are going to go in a little more, things like that. And that game definitely kind of plays into that with the two body types of like the man character has like the more strong jaw, you know, he's a little taller, you know, he like doesn't have the chest, you know, things like that. And I wish that they had a little more options for that too, rather than just having man, strong jaw, then the woman, thin face body types, you know, because you could easily have like the man, quote unquote, you know, tall, muscular body type with titties. Like that would have been nice. And like giving us those options, but they still very much, even though, you know, they've got the pronouns, at least they've got she, he, they pronouns, but you can choose regardless of body type. It would be nice to kind of have that, you know, kind of breaking away from the stereotypical, like, this is what a man looks like. This is what a woman looks like. These are the parts that the man has. These are the parts that the woman has, which is a common trope, I think, even in a lot of the games where there are character customization. And for Baldur's Gate too, like Baldur's Gate did a good job. Okay, let me, don't get me wrong. Baldur's Gate had a lot of good options. Okay, right? Being able to choose your voice separate from the gender, separate them, the body parts, you know, you can choose like your chest, your like, you know, other genitalia area, things like that. It's really nice because it has all those options to, you know, switch that around. But one thing again that they do is that, you know, you've got 4 body types to choose from. First one is like the woman body where they automatically default to titties, vulva. They default to like the slimmer face. They default to the woman's voice. They default to she, her pronouns, being identified as a woman. Like they very much also kind of lean into that where it's like, all right, if you're choosing body 1, your default is obviously that you're a woman. If you're choosing body type 2, obviously you're a man. Yep, a cis man. Thank you. Cis man, same for 3 and 4. It's like it goes from cis woman to cis man to cis woman to cis man, where you can technically change, you know, the quote unquote identity that they've got, which is the male, female, and non-binary / other option. But it still has, you know, those kind of defaulted ideas of this is what the cis man body is going to look like. Even if you can change it, like it just kind of sucks that they have programmed it in to be like, you know, if you got the man, these are all the body parts you have, obviously. And even if you go look at like the genitalia area, if you're like changing all of that, whenever you choose those different bodies as well, it doesn't say like, because you can choose between like 4 different types of penises and like 3 different types of vulvas. And it says default, depending on the man body, like depending on the body that you choose. So if you choose a cis man body, it says default and has the penis. And if you choose like the cis woman body, it's like the default is obviously going to be the vulva. And that's kind of irritating. So I'm like, it would be really nice to not have it say default, because it's again reinforcing these stereotypes of this is what the man's got to look like. And these are the parts that he obviously has. And I'm like, dang it, because they have so many options. And because all of them you could change anyway, what's the point in putting those maybe, you know, on one hand, maybe it's accessibility, you know, the fatigue of having to go through like 3 hours worth of character creation might be a lot. So maybe that's what they're, you know, because it's a lot, because there's so much you can change. So maybe it was that, and they wanted to have those like, you know, usual, quote unquote, usual options for people. But I don't know, that irked me a little bit.
No, that's a very valid point that you just brought up. So like, it's progress. I mean, the fact that we have these options, and I mean, for the longest time, like, I mean, just playing as a male avatar in video games, that was the default, and that was the only and even in games where you could play as a male or a female, the default was always the male. So yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of progress. I mean, I've been gaming for a very long time, and I know what games used to be like, and I can compare that to what they're like now. But there's still room to improve. We still have a ways to go. Absolutely.
But at least it's progress.
I haven't played Baldur's Gate, so now I'm the guy who hasn't seen Shrek. But I'm wondering what do they do about melanin and like race? Because I know there's fantasy races, because it's also D&D.
Oh, you can pick whatever skin color you want.
But is there a default one that it starts on, or is it randomized? Like, does it default to human? Does it default to white? Like,
so I think there's a bunch of presets. But I do think it does default to like a Caucasian appearance. If you pick human, so if you pick one of the other, so if you pick like an orc, or if you play as an orc, your default is green. If you play as a dragonborn,
you can be a purple orc.
Yeah, you can. You can be a blue person.
Ooh, like from
You could be
Avatar?
Stitch.
Yeah, you can just pick whatever color you want for your skin tone.
Mhm.
That's cool. Yeah. My other question is, so I mean, if they obviously put all this work into having genitals at all,
Mm.
do they have what I call a penis or a trans guy penis, which is what
No,
happens
they do not.
to the clitoris when it gets larger on testosterone, but it
Mm.
hasn't been surgically altered? Because that's technically a configuration that definitely exists in the world.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
do. I haven't seen it. I also wish like they also didn't have options for top surgery scars.
That
And I
was
was
my other
like
question.
really
Yeah.
hopeful. Yeah, because I was like, there's so much you can I know that I think you can add mods to the game, and I definitely have seen people on Reddit talking about like modding the game to have those scars and have those things. That way they
Oh,
can
yeah.
create characters that are more like themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Is
Yeah.
there
So and
vitiligo?
there are like several different options for genitalia. If you're human or human-like, because the character I'm playing right now is a dragonborn, and you have one
Oh,
option for vulva, you have one option for
dang.
penis, and you can just have nothing.
Yeah. Oh, I
Could you
love
also
it.
have both? Is there a
Please.
No.
both option?
Uh,
That'd be nice. That'd be nice. Oh, yeah.
so speaking of games that are doing well, what are some other video games that have absolutely nailed it in terms of being trans inclusive?
Yeah. Oh, I got a couple. So definitely the Sims have done a good job, right? Because you can
Oh, I didn't
have
even think of
she
that.
yeah, because and that's like a lot of like I feel like Sims, I don't play it specifically because it has so much and it's too much for my brain. But I've heard from, my simmers, my simmer friends that it's like a very huge queer community base. Like they've got a pretty large queer
Oh, that's
community base in that
cool.
game. Yeah, and so they are great because they've got you can create characters that use she, he, or they, or also custom pronouns, and you can use different ones for each of the options, right? So instead of having like just she, her, and hers, if you choose the she, her option, you can actually customize it to be, z, him, and theirs. That way it
Oh.
changes those out. So you can have those multiple pronoun options, which most games don't have that option. So that's really fantastic. Momo Misfortune, who's fantastic, petitioned and did a really good job. And they're like the reason that has been pushed through. Like they did a huge campaign to get that added in. There's also really nice custom gender settings in the game. Like I've watched a lot of videos to make sure I could talk about this. And they've got custom gender settings where you can choose like either the mask or femme frame, and you can actually choose and like indicate whether or not, like, regardless of whatever you end up choosing, whatever pronouns, whatever frame you use, you can specifically choose if this person can get pregnant or impregnate others, if they can use the toilet
Oh.
standing or not, if they prefer mask versus femme clothing, things like that. So there's all those options as well, which is really nice. You also can do character customization to add like top surgery scars in the game too, which is really nice. And I think
Oh.
that was a pretty recent update. And there's also binders that won't technically like flatten your chest if you put the binder on, but you can change like breast size and things like that in the character customization. So you could choose the binder and then like compress it to where you personally want it to be, which is nice. And I know that in some of they've got like default packs that they release, and in some of the default packs that they release, they have a lot of queer couples, which is really nice. And they also have some trans rep in some of the packs as well. That way, that's kind of built into their lore as well, which is really, really nice. So Sims has done a really good job, and I really love it because of that. Watching other people play it, not me, because it's too much. But I love watching other
No,
people get excited
I'm
about
not a
it.
Sims enjoyer, but I love that all
Yeah,
that stuff exists.
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, like so they've done a good job with that. I was a teenage exo-colonist. It's probably one of my favorites. I think they did the pronouns in probably my favorite way that I've ever seen in the game. I was a teenage exo-colonist is a beautiful game. If anyone has not heard of it, it is fantastic. I think it came out 2020, 2021, 2 years ago, I think. And it is gorgeous. Everything in it is amazing. And their character customization, like in terms of pronouns, because you have the same like base player, but the character customization in terms of pronouns for that game was fantastic because you could customize it to the point where you had a whole giant list of what you wanted to be called as a parent. So you could choose mother, like you could write in pretty much whatever you want, but you
Mm.
could choose like mother, and like if someone's trying to call you like a parent in some way, you could put mother, but then so you could use like he him pronouns, and then if someone's referring to you in a sibling way, you could do something completely different. And there were like 50 different choices or something, 50 different ways people could refer to you in the entire game, where you could customize every single one of those.
Cool.
Yeah, the devs did a beautiful job with that, and it was freaking phenomenal. Honestly, you could choose honorifics, everything. And so I think that is probably my favorite way that I've ever seen anyone do pronoun customization, because it was so in depth.
Do they
Granted,
have any
it
like
doesn't.
multilingual pronouns or multilingual honorifics?
I mean, you can, yeah, like you can literally type in anything you want. So it's like a type in
Cool.
field. So you could choose
Yeah.
those, yeah, which is really, really nice.
So like
And
if you wanted
even
your kids to
Mhm.
call you Poppy, but then you're he,
Yeah,
him, or instead
yeah, you
Oh,
could do that.
of
Mhm.
EL. Okay,
Yeah,
that's cool.
yeah, it was so cool. Yeah, and it was really well done, because I don't think I've ever seen a game uh go that in depth.
Mhm.
I think the developers are queer, which is probably why, they did all
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. So they did it really well. And there's also a scene talking about, spoiler alerts, there's a scene, I'm not gonna pull too much, but there's a scene pretty much that's talking about like you get to choose how you're kind of going through puberty. And you get to choose that in the game,
Mm.
and it doesn't like default to anything. And so like it asks you, are you menstruating, or is your voice changing, and are you getting erections, or are you just like, or you could, or like nothing. You can opt out and be like, nope, nothing's happening, in case you don't want any of that. So
Oh,
it's a nice little subtle
I
thing
wish I
here
could have done that in
too.
real life.
Yeah, right. Literally. Should I opt out of this
Like,
like
no, no,
puberty?
thanks. No.
Yeah. And so it did a good job with that too, and not like defaulting depending on if you chose like the mask body, the femme, or the
Mm.
androgynous. So they had those three choices. And you can also just change anything at any point, and it's like a story game. So like it automatically just updates. Like there's no like storyline specifically about it, but they'll change over if you end up wanting to change all of that stuff, which is nice too. It has a lot of queer characters, as well as polyamorep. There's also some trans characters. And it's just really, really great, and it's beautiful, and they've done a really good job with all the representation in it, and a lot of POC also, which was really nice to see. So a lot of content warnings. It has a list of content warnings like whenever you buy the game as well. Like it has it in
Oh,
game, so you
okay.
can look at
That's
those,
good.
which is nice. hmm Um, and so it's fantastic. I'll type it in the chat in case people
Yeah.
don't
No,
know how to spell it.
I'm always looking for more queer games.
Yeah.
I recently bought like a big like humble bundle of a bunch of queer
Yeah.
games. And
hmm
there's one in particular I want to give a shout out to, because like everyone knows Celeste. Yeah, like
Yeah.
you exist on the internet and you know what Celeste is. But like there's one in particular I want to give a shout out to, is Super Lesbian Animal RPG.
I've heard good things. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
good. Oh my
Yeah.
god, it's so good, and it's so queer, and it's so trans.
Yeah.
I adore it. Because like I load up the game, and it's it's cartoony, and it's like
Mhm.
playing as like anthropomorphic
Yeah.
animals, which is not really
Silly.
my jam. I was like,
Mhm.
I don't know how much I'm gonna like this," and I absolutely fell in love with that game.
Yeah.
So
Mhm. Mhm.
it's fantastic. I wholeheartedly recommend it. Uh,
Yeah, another game that also has some pretty good. Again, I have not played, but I've heard people just like rave about because of how great it was. Is A Year of Springs, which is like a visual
oh,
novel about relationships and things like that. And you play as three different people, kind of in the same friend group, and one of them is a trans woman. And so you get to see her and the struggles that she goes through because of her identity, living in Japan and all of that. So it's
mm,
got that nice little tie-in. And then you see the struggles that she goes through, and then you also play as the other two friends to see how like them viewing what she's going through and seeing like how she can like how they could help her and make sure that like she's feeling comfortable. And so that's also a really big one
Yeah,
that
I've actually
I've not
played
played.
that.
But did you like it?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, good.
It's actually it's three. It comes in a bundle now with three visual novels in one. So the first
Oh,
one
that's cool.
is the I think it's called One Night Hot Springs is the first
Mm,
game, and then
mhm.
the big pack of all of them is the what you said.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's a visual novel with different endings. I think there might be 8 different endings, and so depending on the choices you make, you get different outcomes. Um,
Yeah.
so I actually really liked replaying it and trying to get all the endings and
Yeah.
getting
Oh,
all
that's so
the what if
fun.
I do this? What if I do
mm,
that? Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and yeah, it's interesting. And you can have positive and
Mhm.
I would say neutral or mediocre, like not super horrible outcomes, but like kind of
That's
like,
good. Yeah.
that was just kind of whatever, sort of missed
Yeah.
connection type endings as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice game. It also, as the story progresses, there's more queer love that's introduced, and there's even asexual representation
Yes.
as it
I
continues.
heard
Haven't finished
that.
the third game yet, but yeah. So there's like trans person, and then there's like trans lesbians, like a trans
Mhm.
woman and a lesbian getting together. Then there's a third character that is
Mhm.
like, oh, I'm ace, and what do I do? Like I'm dating someone, and I
Mhm.
don't know, and so like there's this whole awakening about realizing
Mhm.
that she's ace and stuff. It's really cool. It's really really
Mhm.
cool. I would recommend that game. It's a wonderful
Mhm.
one. I appreciate you
Wow.
bringing it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard
I've
people
got
talking
some I
about
got
it,
some
so
games to add to my wish list tonight.
right.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
If and when I ever get over my hyperfixation on Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there anything else about being trans at work or queerness in media that you'd like to make sure that you say today, Tofi?
Yeah, I think the main thing is, I know we've seen a lot of like we're starting to get more trans rep in characters and things like that, but we are missing a lot of intersections, right? A lot of the trans rep we get in video games and stuff is very much, thin, white, able-bodied rep, which is not great because there are a whole myriad of other folks who need to be included and need those voices,
Mhm.
and we should really like include. And so that is something I feel like that we're very much missing from just all media, not just video games, but also in like shows, TVs, animes, things like that. So just we need more rep. I think is the main thing. Yeah.
So
Mm,
to circle back to something we talked about earlier about how a lot of our stories are kind of they're kind of framed around our trauma or pain or whatnots, and I think it's far more important to share our experiences with our joy of being trans. So can you share an experience that you've had with gender euphoria?
Yeah. So I'm not out to folks. I'm not out to my family at all, right? I pretty separated from them. But my grandma, I went to go see her a couple weeks ago. She's not doing super well, but I went to go see her, and like the main thing is that I've not seen her in a couple years. Right, my voice was very much higher. I looked very much different because I used to perform very femininely. And so like whenever I talk to her ever, whenever like I talk to her on the phone or see her or anything, it's always like, "Are you sick? What's wrong with your voice?" Because it's gotten a lot deeper. And this last time that I went to go visit, she called my uncle, who I never talk to. I literally do not speak to. But she called my uncle because she was like, "Oh, he's got to hear, like, he's got to, talk to you, say hi." And she was like, "Guess who's here?" And I was like, "Hi, it's blah 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 blah, blah dead name." And he was like, "I don't know who that is." Like, he had no idea who I was at all. Like, he didn't recognize my voice. He didn't recognize anything. And so
Mm,
that was a nice little euphoric moment because I don't get, I usually still get gendered as a woman all the time. And so those little
mm,
moments where it's like someone has no idea, or like family doesn't, quote unquote family, legal family doesn't recognize me. I'm like, yes. Like, love this. It's really nice. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's definitely very relatable when, you see someone you haven't seen in a long time, or you talk to someone you haven't
Mhm.
talked to in a long time, and you've changed so much since the last
Mhm.
time that like they don't even recognize you. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I've
It's a
I've had
good
that experience
feeling.
outside of gender where like
Mhm.
I went through a period where I lost a lot of weight. Like I used to be
Mhm.
very overweight, and I lost a bunch of weight, and I was hanging out with my sister and like her friends, and one of her friends' dad was like, "Who are you?" I'm like, I'm well, I would have said at the time I'm her brother.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
he's like,
yeah.
"Oh my god."
Please.
So now I feel like I might get that experience a lot more. It's like, who are
Mhm.
it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
Miranda
here
now.
you go. Yeah.
Um, Tofi, what do you want to make sure that folks know about your perspective on gender, non-binary, trans, agender, or gender diverse issues?
Yeah. I mean, the main thing is that, we've always existed and we always will continue to exist. And finding community is, I think, is the most important thing. So find some folks, who, are accepting regardless of how you decide to, express your gender, because you don't have to fit into those little boxes. Just find little moments of joy, I think, and don't, you don't have to conform to the gender binary norms if you do not want to. It's also okay if you do. So
I like that. Thank you so much for being on the show today. This has been an absolute treat.
Yes.
Thank
I could sit
you.
here for at least another hour and keep just excitedly talking about all the things. And we want to respect our mods and producers' time today. So, folks, Tofi, they, them pronouns is a queer Asian American content creator, cosplayer, and Shrek enthusiast who strives to cultivate a space where we can all proudly exist as ourselves. You can find Tofi on Twitch and Twitter with the handle Tofilium, Tofilium. And here is this week's Clouder query that you, our audience, can answer on our social media platforms. And I'll even let Tofi read it to all of you.
Ooh. Our
Ooh.
Clouder query is, what
Yes.
fictional media really helped shape your identity? I hope it's Shrek for most of you. Except for one person here, but that's who's counting.
Love that. So y'all, next week's guest is Andy, he, they pronouns, and we'll be discussing how dissociative identity disorder intersects with aspects of his identity. So wonderful. So far as community updates, we always need like help with modding and like making graphics and all of that stuff. So if you're interested in sort of joining the Clouder contributors, the volunteer staff that helps make all of this stuff happen, reach out to GenderMeowster, me, on Discord, or even my email, which is gendermeowster@gmail.com, and let us know if that's something that you're interested in. So we would love to take a moment to also thank our supporters on Patreon. Holly Blash, Winter Vespers, Loch Ness Gamer, Justin Baker Rojas, Sandra Mickelborg, Yaicio, Ray of Swords, Sherry Keller, Mirami, the Hessian, and Trans Capybara. We could not make the show without all of your support. The money that you send in helps us keep our Zoom license so we can have the show be more than 40 minutes long. And, if we ever do get to a point where our Patreon is making enough money, then we can actually offer honorariums to our guests and all sorts of things. I did also want to mention that we also have a Discord server, and that's open to everyone, not just our Patreon supporters. So I actually had someone was like, "Oh, I wasn't sure if I was allowed to join because maybe it's for patrons only." But since this is a Twitch community in addition to a podcast, our Discord is not only locked to patrons. So anyone listening to the show later, you are totally welcome to be in our spaces. For me, it's important to have community spaces that are accessible to people at all levels of income, not just the people who can afford to be in the space. So so the Discord is open for all. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to Miranda for being my co-host today, to Mirami for producing the show, and to Philium for being our guest. This has been a wonderful episode, and I hope everyone enjoyed it too. Don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, review, all of that stuff, just to help with the search engine optimization so more people can hear about how cool Shrek is. Thank you for listening. Now I'll let Mary play the outro. Bye, everybody.
Join my Shrek goal.
Genderful would like to thank our guest for being on this podcast. If you'd like to catch us live, join us on Mondays on twitch.tv/GenderMeowster. Show notes will appear in the edited versions of the show on Fridays on both YouTube and podcasting platforms.
If you have a question you'd like the host to answer or are gender diverse and would like to request an interview, please send an email to genderfulpodcast@gmail.com or sign up via the website at genderfulpodcast.com.
As a gender diverse community, the Clouder wants to assure our listeners that we're prepared to moderate our spaces. We will get positive and negative feedback on these shows and topics, and we have a moderation team on our channels, socials, and Discord server ready to deal with this.
Please join our Discord server at discord.gg/meowster to meet the community and get a regular digest of solidarity resources. You can also support us with subscriptions on Patreon, following and reviewing us on your favorite podcasting platform, or engaging with our posts and content on social media at GenderfulPod and at GenderMeowster.
You can take a few minutes to rate the show. We will post any 5-star reviews on our socials, so get creative. Mention a special interest of your own, a project you're working on, or even say hi to your comfort person in your review. What power!
This show is made possible by volunteers, tips, and subscriptions. Shout out to the folks helping us coordinate guests, edit the podcast, moderate the live chat, and post on our socials.
Here's our artist credit. Genderful is hosted by Miranda Katita and GenderMeowster. Genderful's pre-show is wrangled by JuiceTex. Genderful's live stream is produced by Mirami. Genderful is edited and mixed by TransGriffin and FreeRangeMegs. Genderful's promos and thumbnail graphic are designed by TransGriffin. Genderful's social media is managed by Kinsey. Genderful's theme song is called Hope by FreeRangeMegs, also known as Soma. The current GenderMeowster logo was designed by Siptopia. Genderful is the intellectual property of GenderMeowster. All rights reserved. Trans rights are human rights. That's right.